Do you think the scariest thing in the mountains is simply slipping and falling down? Not at all. The Himalayas are not a tourist postcard with a beautiful sunset. They are a gigantic, merciless mechanism that grinds human destinies. We have gathered 10 locations that make even experienced extreme adventurers shiver. And what is done to people at number 10 is a tradition that will change your worldview forever. Take a deep breath. Let's begin. Any journey to Everest does not begin with the first step up the mountain, but with a flight that many call a one-way ticket. Welcome to Tenzing Hillary Airport, better known as Lukla. This place consistently ranks first on lists of the most dangerous airports on the planet, and believe me, it earned that title for a reason. Imagine sitting in a tiny, shaking airplane. Outside the window, there are thick clouds and the tops of cliffs passing frighteningly close to the wing. Your palms are sweating. Your heart is pounding somewhere in your throat. The pilot begins the descent, and then you see it. The runway, if it can even be called that. A standard runway at international airports is 3,000 or 4,000 meters of concrete. Here the pilot has only 527 meters. That is incredibly short. It is like trying to land a passenger plane on an aircraft carrier deck, only instead of water, there are sheer cliffs all around. But the length is only half the problem. The runway itself is built on a 12% slope. This is done deliberately so that landing aircraft can brake faster while climbing uphill, and departing planes can accelerate faster while rolling downhill. There are no automatic landing systems here, no autopilot. Only the pilot's hands, their eyes, and their nerves. The slightest mistake in calculations, a sudden gust of wind, which in the mountains can appear within seconds, and there is no way to correct it. There is no such thing as a go-around here. On one side of the runway, there is a massive rock wall, and on the other side, a 700-meter drop disappearing into a foggy valley. If the pilot fails to stop in time, the aircraft will crash into the mountain. If it cannot gain speed during takeoff, it will simply fall into the abyss. The weather in Lukla is its own kind of torture. Clear sunshine can turn into dense fog in just 10 minutes. Every year, thousands of tourists become stranded here for days or even weeks, waiting for a small window in the sky, because flying blind in this place is almost guaranteed to end in disaster. It is here that you first realize something important. The Himalayas do not forgive overconfidence. You have not even put on your backpack yet, and your life has already been hanging by a thread. If you think that after landing in Lukla the worst is behind you, you are deeply mistaken. Once you step down from the sky to the ground, you fall into a new trap. Welcome to the Karakoram Highway, a road often called the eighth wonder of the world. But the locals know it by another name, the highway built on bones. It is the highest paved international road on the planet, and every kilometer of it is soaked in tragedy. Imagine a narrow ribbon of asphalt winding at an altitude of 4,693 meters above sea level. The air here is so thin that an unprepared traveler may start feeling dizzy simply from stepping out of the car. But the dizziness will not come only from the lack of oxygen. Look out the window. Just half a meter from the wheel of your bus or jeep begins the abyss. There are no guardrails, no barriers. There is only you, a narrow strip of gravel, and a kilometer-deep drop where an icy river roars far below. This road was built over 20 years, from 1959 to 1979. Engineers and workers from Pakistan and China carved their way through the mountains using dynamite and the simplest tools. The mountains resisted. They did not want to let humans into their domain. The statistics of construction sound like a battlefield report. According to official data, more than 810 Pakistani and about 200 Chinese workers lost their lives while building the highway. Think about those numbers. It means that every kilometer of road cost a human life. When you drive along this asphalt, you are literally traveling across a giant memorial. But the tragedy is not only in the past, The danger here is very real in the present. The Karakoram Highway runs through a zone of active tectonic faults. The mountains here are alive. They are constantly rising and crumbling. Rockfalls do not happen once a year. They happen every day. Massive boulders the size of small cars can crash down from above without warning, sweeping away everything in their path. One of the most terrifying events happened in 2010. A gigantic landslide collapsed into the Hunza Valley, completely burying a village and blocking the river. This created the enormous Attabad Lake, which flooded 19 kilometers of the highway. For a long time, the only way to cross that section was by fragile wooden boats, even transporting vehicles across the water, with the constant risk of capsizing in the freezing lake. Today, tunnels have been built there, but the feeling of danger never leaves drivers for a second. The drivers who work on this route are people with nerves of titanium, or with no instinct for self-preservation at all. They guide heavy trucks painted with bright patterns along the edge of the cliff as if they were driving through a supermarket parking lot. One wrong turn of the steering wheel, a brake failure on a long descent, or a sudden landslide, and the vehicle plunges into freefall. No one will recover it. The rusty skeletons of trucks lying far below on the rocks serve as a far better warning than any road sign. It is a road of incredible beauty and extreme danger, where the landscape outside your window could be the last thing you ever see. We leave the roads behind and climb even higher, to a place where the usual laws of physics seem to stop working. In the Kingdom of Bhutan, there is a place that looks like a set from a fantasy movie, yet it is completely real. The monastery Paro Taksang, known around the world as the Tiger's Nest. When you look at photographs of it, your mind refuses to believe that such a structure could actually be built. Imagine a sheer, almost vertical granite cliff. It rises 900 meters above the valley floor, and right there, on a tiny ledge, literally clinging to the rock, hangs a huge temple complex. It seems to float in the air, challenging gravity itself. It feels as if one strong gust of wind could tear those elegant buildings with their golden roofs from the cliff and throw them into the abyss. Legend says that in the second half of the 8th century, the great guru Padmasambhava flew here. Not by helicopter, of course, but riding on a tigress. His disciple transformed into the animal. He meditated in a cave on this cliff for 3 years, 3 months, 3 weeks, 3 days, and 3 hours to subdue the local demons. That is why the place became known as the Tiger's Nest. It sounds beautiful, but when you stand at the foot of the cliff and look up, the mysticism gives way to a primal fear. To reach the monastery, there is no elevator and no cable car. Only your legs and a narrow winding trail carved directly into the rock. The ascent takes about 2 or 3 hours of difficult climbing. The air grows thinner and thinner, making it hard to breathe. But the hardest challenge comes at the very end. Just when you think you have reached your destination, the trail suddenly drops away. Before you is a deep gorge where a waterfall crashes loudly at the bottom. To reach the monastery, you must descend about 700 stone steps into the damp and cold shadow, cross a narrow bridge over the roaring water, and then climb back up again along equally steep steps. All of this without any guardrails along the cliffside. One wrong step, a moment of dizziness from the height, or simply a wet stone under your foot, and you face a fall of nearly a kilometer. The monastery itself has suffered from fires several times. In 1998, a blaze almost completely destroyed the main building. Imagine trying to fight a fire on a vertical cliff where no equipment can reach. Monks and local residents rebuilt the shrine by hand, carrying every beam, every brick, and every bucket of paint on their backs along that same dangerous trail. It was a titanic effort driven by extraordinary faith. Inside the monastery, there is absolute silence, broken only by the wind and the sound of prayer wheels. In the floor of one room, there is a hatch. If you open it, you can see the very cave where the guru meditated, and the sheer abyss descending below. Looking into that darkness, you begin to understand just how fragile human life is in the presence of the mountains. If the tiger's nest scares you with its height, the next place will make you fear every step you take. We move to the Hunza River Valley, where an engineering structure stands that regularly tops lists of the most terrifying bridges in the world. Meet the Hussaini Suspension Bridge. When you first see it, the first thought that appears is, are you serious? People actually walk on this? The bridge looks as if it has survived an apocalypse, an earthquake, and an attack by Godzilla all at once. It is a long, sagging structure made of rusty cables stretched across a wide, raging river. But the most frightening part is the walkway. It is not a solid path. It is made of narrow, rotten wooden planks placed about 30 or 40 centimeters apart. Some of the boards are broken, some are simply missing. They fell into the river long ago. When you look down, you see icy grey water rushing at incredible speed far below your feet. The moment you step onto the bridge, it begins to live a life of its own. The entire structure sways from side to side with every movement you make. And when the famous Himalayan wind blows, the bridge turns into a giant swinging pendulum. You have to balance like a tightrope walker in a circus, desperately gripping the cold, rusty cables that serve as handrails. The bridge was built by local villagers using whatever materials they had. No engineers, no load calculations, no safety standards, just ropes and old boards. Floods regularly destroy it, and the locals, with stubborn determination worthy of admiration, rebuild it again and again, making the structure look even more terrifying. Next to the current bridge hang the remains of the previous one, just a bundle of broken cables dangling in the wind, a grim reminder that nothing here lasts forever. Looking at those ruins, you cannot help but think, when will the one I'm standing on collapse? But the most astonishing thing is the attitude of the local people. For tourists, it is an extreme attraction that makes hair turn grey and knees tremble. Visitors walk a few meters for a photo and then run back in panic. For the residents of Hussaini village, however, this is simply the road home, or the path to the market. You might see a woman calmly walking across these shaking boards with a huge basket of firewood on her head, or children running to school, jumping over the gaps as if they were playing hopscotch. This place completely breaks the mindset of a city person. There is no safety net here. If you slip and fall between the planks, your chances of surviving the raging current are almost zero. The river will carry you away instantly. The Hussaini Bridge is a test of your nerves. It creaks, groans in the wind, and sways as if whispering a warning. Turn back while you still can. But if you need to reach the other side, you simply have no choice. We climb into the Indian Himalayas to an altitude of 5,029 meters. Here, among snow-covered peaks, a small glacial lake is hidden. For most of the year, it is frozen and looks like an ordinary white spot on the map. But once a year, when the sun begins to melt the snow, the lake reveals its terrifying secret. Locals call it the Lake of Skeletons, and this is not a metaphor. Imagine walking up to the shore, looking into the clear, icy water, and seeing that the bottom is literally covered with human bones. Skulls, ribs, and femurs lie scattered among the stones. There are hundreds of them. According to official estimates, more than 500 bodies. Some skeletons are preserved so well that pieces of skin and hair still remain. Who were these people? How did an entire army of the dead appear in such a lifeless place where there are no roads and no settlements? For decades, this place remained one of the greatest mysteries for scientists and a source of terrifying legends for local residents. Many different theories were proposed. Perhaps it was an ancient army that died in battle, or a ritual mass suicide, or maybe an unknown epidemic that forced people to retreat into the mountains to die. The truth turned out to be more frightening than any legend. Several years ago, scientists conducted a detailed analysis of the remains and discovered the cause of death. All of these people died at the same time and almost instantly. They all had the same injuries, deep cracks in the upper part of the skull and fractures in the shoulders. The pattern of damage showed that the blows came from above, from something round and extremely hard. It was not a weapon, it was nature itself. Around the 9th century, roughly 850 AD, a large group of pilgrims became trapped in this mountain valley. Suddenly the sky darkened and a violent storm began. But it was not ordinary rain or snow. Giant hail began to fall from the sky. Ice stones up to 7 centimeters in diameter fell at tremendous speed, like cannonballs. In the mountains, out in the open, there was nowhere to hide. The people were completely defenseless. The hail literally beat them to death, crushing their skulls and breaking their bones. More than 500 people died within minutes, with no chance of survival. Their bodies remained on the shore and in the water, preserved by the cold for almost 1,000 years. Interestingly, local legend had described this event for centuries. Ancient songs spoke of an angry goddess who, furious that people had desecrated her sacred place, sent down an iron rain upon them. For a long time, scientists believed this was only a myth until they studied the shattered skulls. Today, this place attracts thrill seekers from all over the world. But the atmosphere here feels heavy. You walk along the shore realizing that any stone beneath your feet might actually be someone's bone. It is a natural memorial reminding us how helpless humans are in the face of nature's fury. When people talk about deadly danger in the mountains, most immediately think of Mount Everest. It is a brand. It is part of pop culture. But the real serial killer of the Himalayas has a different name. A name professional climbers pronounce almost in a whisper. Meet Annapurna 1, the 10th highest mountain in the world, rising to 8,091 meters, yet the absolute champion of cruelty. Everest today is a commercial enterprise. For enough money, even an unprepared tourist can be guided to the summit. But Annapurna is a sentence. The statistics here are cold and merciless, just like the ice on its summit. Until recently, the death rate was a horrifying 32%. Think about that number. Every third person who dared to climb its slopes never returned home. For comparison, on deadly Everest, about 4% of climbers die. Climbing Annapurna is like Russian roulette, where the revolver has 2 bullets instead of 1. So what is the secret? Why does this mountain kill? It is not only the extreme altitude or the technical difficulty of the route. The real danger lies in the nature of the mountain itself. Annapurna is a massive, unpredictable snow trap. Its southern face is considered one of the most avalanche-prone areas on the planet. The snow here almost never stays stable. Avalanches do not follow schedules and do not wait for heavy snowfall. They can break loose at any second. Millions of tons of compressed snow, ice and rock thunder down the slopes, destroying everything in their path. On Everest, you may die because of your own mistake. Your oxygen runs out, you unclip your rope, you stop to rest and freeze. On Annapurna, you can be the best climber in the world, do everything perfectly, and the mountain will simply decide to destroy you. You might be sitting in your tent, drinking tea, and a second later, a white avalanche buries the entire camp, turning it into a mass grave. It was here in October 2014 that one of the largest tragedies in Himalayan history occurred. A sudden cyclone called Hudhud brought abnormal snowfall. Dozens of people became trapped near the Thorongla Pass. Avalanches came one after another. 43 people died. Rescuers later found bodies frozen upright as the victims tried to shield themselves from the icy wind with their arms. Even the legendary Soviet climber Anatoly Bukriev, the man who survived the 1996 Everest disaster and saved others there, died here. In 1997, Annapurna simply dropped an avalanche on him. His body was never found. The mountain kept him as a trophy. There are no tourist lines here like on Chomolungma, only a heavy, oppressive silence. The few climbers lucky enough to reach the summit and return alive all say the same thing. During the entire ascent, they felt like targets, as if standing in a shooting range while the shooter calmly waited for the perfect moment. Annapurna does not forgive, does not offer second chances, and almost never gives back its dead. It is pure, concentrated risk. If Annapurna takes lives with sudden avalanches, Then on the way to the summit of Mount Everest, there is a section that tests a climber's nerves with every single step. This place is often called the gateway to hell, and there is no way around it. To reach the highest mountain on Earth, you must pass through the Khumbu Icefall. For many climbers, this becomes the most terrifying part of the entire expedition. Imagine a gigantic frozen river of ice, slowly but relentlessly sliding down the mountain slope. But this is not a smooth surface, it is chaos. Under enormous pressure, the glacier cracks, breaks apart, and rises into a surreal labyrinth of ice towers, sharp peaks, and deep crevasses. These ice blocks, called seracs, can be the size of multi-story buildings. They hang over the route at impossible angles, as if defying gravity. The biggest problem with the Khumbu Icefall is that it is constantly moving. The glacier here shifts at a speed of about 1 meter per day. That means the landscape literally changes before your eyes. A flat surface that was safe yesterday may open into a bottomless crevasse today. And the massive ice tower your group passed in the morning might collapse by evening, turning the route into a pile of shattered ice. Climbers sometimes call this place a popcorn field because the ice constantly cracks and snaps, creating a continuous rumbling sound. You walk and hear the glacier groaning, creaking, and booming somewhere deep inside. The most difficult obstacles here are enormous crevasses that disappear into darkness up to 50 meters deep. To cross them, the Sherpas, the local high-altitude guides, build bridges using ordinary aluminium ladders. They tie together 3, 4, sometimes even 5 ladder sections with ropes and lay them across the icy gaps. Now imagine yourself in the climber's place. You are wearing a bulky downsuit. On your feet are heavy boots with metal spikes, crampons. A backpack is on your shoulders. Your breathing is already strained because of the altitude. And now you must walk across a narrow vibrating ladder that bends under your weight, suspended above a black abyss. There are no railings, only thin ropes on the sides that you can hold with your hands. Your crampons scrape against the metal rungs. The ladder flexes beneath you. One awkward movement, your spike catches on a rung, you lose balance, and your safety rope becomes the only thing separating you from falling into the icy trap below. There is even a special group of people known as the Icefall Doctors. These are Sherpas who go onto the route first every morning, checking the ladders and creating new paths if the glacier has shifted. They take the greatest risks of all. In April 2014, one of the largest tragedies on Everest occurred here. A massive block of ice hanging above the route suddenly broke loose. 16 Nepalese guides, who were carrying loads for expeditions, were buried under the avalanche. In such an ice grinder, the chances of survival are almost zero. To reduce the risk, climbers try to cross the icefall late at night using the light of headlamps. When the temperature is at its lowest, the ice remains more stable. As soon as the first rays of the sun touch the glacier, it begins to warm. The bonds between ice crystals weaken, and the chance of collapse increases dramatically. Being here during the day is considered reckless madness. The Khumbu Icefall is real Russian roulette. Here your experience and physical preparation matter far less than the unpredictable mood of the mountain itself. You simply move as fast as possible, trying not to look up at the towering blocks of ice above you, and hoping that at this exact moment, the glacier decides to stay still. Climbing even higher, we enter a zone where the familiar world ends and the domain of death begins. At altitudes above 8,000 meters, every step requires enormous effort, and the brain begins to slow down because of the lack of oxygen. But the most frightening thing at this height is not only the thin air. The most terrifying part is the landscape that opens before climbers on Mount Everest. Welcome to a place with a deceptively beautiful name, Rainbow Valley. The name sounds almost poetic, but the origin of this rainbow makes your skin crawl. It is not made of light refracted through drops of water. This rainbow is made of hundreds of bright spots scattered across the white snow. Red, blue, yellow, and orange down jackets, colourful tents, and oxygen cylinders. But inside those jackets are people who remained here forever. Rainbow Valley is the highest open-air cemetery on the planet. Here, along the main route to the summit, lie the bodies of climbers who died. It is almost impossible to bring them down. Helicopters cannot fly at such altitude, and the living barely have the strength to carry themselves. Recovering a single body requires the effort of an entire team of Sherpas, enormous expense, and still puts the rescuers' lives at risk. So those who remain here gradually become part of the mountain. You walk toward your dream, the summit of the world, and literally step over those who did not make it. Some bodies have been here for decades. The cold and the dry wind mummify them, preserving their clothing and faces almost untouched. They look as if they simply sat down to rest and fell asleep. The most famous resident of this place became a grim symbol of Everest. Climbers call him Green Boots. This was the body of an Indian climber, Sewang Paljor, who died in 1996 during the infamous storm. He lay curled up in a small limestone cave, wearing his bright green plastic boots. For more than 20 years, every climber approaching the summit from the north side had to pass within a meter of him. Over time, people even began to use him as a landmark. Reach the green boots, then turn right. A person who once had a family, dreams, and plans became a trail marker. Only recently was the body moved and partially covered with stones, but the memory of him remains forever in the history of Everest. Here, in Rainbow Valley, the line between the living and the dead begins to disappear. The moral rules that exist down below no longer work here. You cannot help someone who collapses beside you. You cannot share your oxygen, because then you will die yourself. The death zone has its own brutal laws, everyone for themselves. Climbers try not to look at the bright jackets sticking out of the snow, but the sight remains in their memory forever. It is a chilling reminder that Everest is not an attraction, but a harsh test, where the price of a mistake is becoming just another colored spot on the white slope. We are used to imagining the Himalayas as the ultimate example of untouched wilderness. In our minds, it is a kingdom of dazzling white snow, piercing blue skies, and crystal clear air that feels impossible to get enough of. But the reality, carefully hidden behind glossy travel brochures and heroic films about climbers, looks frighteningly different. The highest mountain in the world, the sacred Chomolungma, has today turned into the highest garbage dump on the planet. And the scale of this environmental disaster, hidden among the clouds, is difficult to imagine. Over the past decades of commercial mountaineering, Everest has experienced a true invasion. Every year, hundreds, sometimes thousands, of people come here to satisfy their ego and stand on the roof of the world. And each of them, willingly or not, leaves something behind. On the slopes of the mountain, dozens, and according to some independent estimates already hundreds, of tons of trash have accumulated. During the climbing season, base camp resembles a small town with tents, kitchens, and generators. But the real nightmare begins higher up. Camp 4, located on the South Col at an altitude of almost 8,000 meters, is essentially an environmental disaster zone. Exhausted climbers, balancing on the edge between life and death, think only about survival. They simply do not have the strength to carry extra weight down the mountain, so they abandon everything. Empty oxygen cylinders, tents torn by the wind, broken aluminium ladders, kilometers of synthetic ropes, food packaging, plastic bottles, and drink cans. All of this freezes into the ice and becomes part of the landscape for years. The wind scatters lightweight plastic across the glaciers, contaminating the snow for kilometers. But there is an even more delicate, unpleasant, and biologically dangerous problem that people usually prefer not to talk about: human waste. At extreme altitudes, in conditions of permafrost and very low temperatures, natural decomposition processes barely function. The bacteria that normally break down organic material simply die or fall into dormancy. At base camp, the problem is managed with large plastic barrels used as toilets. Later, they are carried down by porters or transported by yaks. But higher up, in the assault camps, there are no toilets at all. People relieve themselves directly in the snow, digging small holes or using special bags that often end up in glacier crevasses. According to environmental researchers, climbers leave about 12 tons of human waste and garbage on the mountain every season. As glaciers begin to melt faster due to climate change, all this material gradually emerges from the ice. Bacteria become active again. Contaminated water flows down into streams and rivers that feed the valleys below. Studies of water in the lower Khumbu region have revealed dangerous levels of E. coli and other pathogenic bacteria. This creates a grim paradox. The great mountain that Sherpas revere as a goddess, the mother of the world, is beginning to poison the very people who live at its foot. The government of Nepal and volunteer organizations are trying to fight this problem. New strict regulations have been introduced. Now every expedition must leave a financial deposit before climbing, which is returned only if the team brings all its garbage back down. Moreover, each climber is required to carry at least 8 kilograms of waste from the mountain. Special cleanup expeditions are organized. Sherpas, risking their lives not for the summit but for the environment, dig old oxygen cylinders out of the ice and carry tons of trash down the mountain. In recent years, climbers have also been required to use biodegradable toilet bags that must be brought back down for disposal. But despite all these efforts, the mountain is polluted so deeply and on such a massive scale that fully cleaning it is still impossible. Everest is slowly losing its sacred purity under layers of plastic and biological waste, turning into a monument to human irresponsibility. We have reached the finale, a place and a tradition that often cause shock, disgust, and genuine horror for many Western observers. But for the people of Tibet and the Himalayas, it is considered the highest act of compassion and the final gift a person can give to the world. Meet the 10th point on our list, the ritual of sky burial, known as Jator. We are in Tibet at an altitude of more than 4,000 meters. There are no dense forests here to gather wood for a funeral pyre. The ground is so rocky and frozen that digging a grave is almost impossible. So what should be done with the body of the deceased? Local people found a solution shaped by the harsh environment and Buddhist philosophy. They give the body to the sky. The ritual takes place in special locations high in the mountains, hidden from outsiders. At dawn, relatives bring the body of the deceased, wrapped in white cloth, to a flat stone platform. There they are met by a rogyapa, a burial master, a person whose duty is to prepare the body. It is difficult and demanding work, but it is respected within the community. Around the platform, on nearby rocks, they are already waiting, hundreds of large Himalayan vultures. These birds know their role and wait patiently. Their wingspans can reach 3 meters. They are the main participants in the ceremony. The rogyapa makes cuts in the body to make it easier for the birds. After that, he steps aside. At a signal, the flock of vultures descends and covers the body in a dense, moving mass. It is not a sight for the faint-hearted. The birds work quickly and efficiently. In about 15 or 20 minutes, nothing of the flesh remains. Only the bones are left. But the process is not finished yet. The skeleton must also be completely reduced. The rogyapa takes a heavy hammer and begins to crush the bones. The fragments are then mixed with tsampa, roasted barley flour, and yak butter. This mixture is offered to the birds again. In the end, nothing remains of the person. No trace, no urn with ashes, no mound of earth. The person completely disappears, returning to nature. For Tibetans, the body is only an empty vessel from which the soul has already departed for its next rebirth. Holding on to that vessel has no meaning. On the contrary, feeding one's body to birds, which are considered sacred beings, dakinis, celestial dancers, is seen as a final act of generosity. You nourish other living beings with your own flesh, thereby repaying karmic debts and improving your karma for the next life. To outsiders, it may appear harsh or unsettling. For them, it is natural and logical. It represents the cycle of life in its purest form. A person comes from nature and returns to it, becoming food for birds that carry the remains into the sky. For many years, Chinese authorities attempted to ban this ritual, considering it barbaric. But the tradition proved stronger than the law. Today, tourists are strictly forbidden to attend or film the ceremony. It is meant to remain a sacred moment between the person, the mountains, and the sky. Sky burial is one of the most honest ways of leaving this world in a place where survival itself is already a struggle. It is a final reminder of a simple truth. Humans are not the masters of this planet. We are only a small part of its vast chain of life. And now a question for you. Would you be able to spend one night in a tent on the slope of Mount Everest, knowing that just a few meters away, beneath the snow, lie those who never made it back down? Or perhaps you would dare to cross the Hussaini bridge. Write in the comments which point on our list scared you the most. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like and press the bell. There are many more places on our planet ahead that will make you see the world from a completely different perspective. Take care of yourselves and see you in the next video.